What is going on, everybody? Welcome to this beautiful Sunday. My name is Dylan Spalding with the Spalding Media Network. We are here on this Sunday recapping the F1 Miami GP that featured sprint racing as well for the first time ever at the track this weekend, and an interesting winner grabbing the victory in Miami in the third annual Miami GP. And to bring it all for you, the F1 guru, the Formula One freak, if you will, Mr. Christopher Everidge.
We're wearing this shirt backwards because Jimmy Butler endorsed Lando Norris, and Jimmy Butler endorsed a champion of Miami, that is. How about this race? It was quite the race. It's our home race. We live in the state of Florida. A certain producer was potentially going to be at the race. But you called me sketch this week because I'm wearing my jersey backward. It's Tuesday. It's not. It's Sunday. We were recording this, just a couple hours after the race. We have a sprint race, as Dylan mentioned. So we're going to talk about the sprint race first. This little meme here is Nico Hülkenberg. It just perfectly explains everything, how everything was fine and dandy for him, and his teammate was causing mass destruction behind. But Miami, why didn't you go, Mr. Spalding?
I had some stuff that came up. We'll say that. Unfortunately, could not go. I got credentialed primarily for the Porsche Carrera Cup. For anybody who doesn't know, F1 got supported this weekend from Porsche Carrera Cup. I obviously cover a lot of the IMSA racing in the series, so I was not able to attend the F1 weekend. I'm very disappointed. Obviously, anybody usually would end up attending that type of a race. Well, I had some stuff happen, and unfortunately it deprived me of going, but always 2025. And it should be an interesting 2025. I get to see Hamilton with Ferrari, which will be interesting. So there's a lot of exciting stuff happening in 2025. A lot of new guys. So maybe 2025 will be the year to go. We'll see.
And maybe I'll be rocking this because, it's the Miami colors. It's perfect.
Maybe we'll be at it together, Chris.
Jimmy Butler. Yeah, maybe Jimmy Butler will be there again. Let's move on here. We're going to talk about the sprint first. But first, let's talk about the 150th running of the Kentucky Derby. Just kidding. Wrong channel. Let's move on. No.
Hey, listen, it was an entertaining race. I'll tell you that much.
Yes. This was Kevin Magnussen in the sprint. I figured I'd throw some memes in here for the sprint race. Just to lighten things up, because it actually was a pretty decent sprint race. Of course, Magnussen was causing mass destruction. He got so many penalties. He got 5 of them, and he might be getting close to a race ban, especially because in the actual race itself, he picked up more penalties. So he could be coming close to a race ban. I don't remember the last time it happened. I think it was Yuki or Pierre who was close. They were 1 point away from getting a race ban. Correct me if I'm wrong. There's probably somebody out there in the comments that knows when a race ban happened. But Magnussen was causing penalties left and right with his battle with Hamilton, all because he wanted his teammate to score some points, which he did. His teammate that won't even be at the team anymore. And as a Hülkenberg supporter down there, Dylan, how do you feel about Nico going to Alfa Romeo Kick Sauber F1 stake team, which will just be called Audi next year?
Dude, I don't know how to feel about this, right? Because you look at this stake team and they're not doing anything better than what Haas is doing right now, right? So, yeah, exactly. They're actually making worse strides maybe than Haas is. I don't know, man. Who is Haas going to bring in is going to be the question. I don't really know who that, key guy is.
I think we discussed last week that it could be Behrman.
It's possible, maybe Pietro Fittipaldi. He's a reserve guy for them, but I doubt that. Dude, I don't know, man. It's a move that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and it also doesn't really jump off the page. It's basically a lower end driver, a lower team driver, moving to another lower team. It's not really anything of substance there. If he moved maybe to like like an Aston Martin or one of the higher teams or maybe middle of the pack teams, might be worth noting. But I don't know, man. It's kind of not.
It's a weird move for
It's a weird move,
especially when his teammate Magnussen is doing whatever he can.
And Haas is really, honestly, a better situation. I'd rather be racing for Haas right now.
I mean, once again, Hulkenberg in the actual race itself finished 11th, but in the sprint finished 7th. So let's move on. Once again, we have this first lap incident. Now, funny enough, the guy there on the left, Lando Norris, would eventually go on to win the real race. But in the sprint race, he was the fatality of whatever happened. In the picture on the right there, you have Alonso, you have Stroll. Now, what happened, what you don't see in the picture is a flying Lewis Hamilton down the inside on turn 1 of a sprint race. Completely runs into Alonso, who runs into Stroll, who runs into Lando. And put it this way, if the rules were the rules last year or 2 years ago, where the results of the sprint race, because the sprint race was effectively qualifying, the results of that ended up being the starting grid. You would have had Lando starting this race in 20th because he got wrecked out in the sprint race. Now, luckily for us, we don't have the whole sprint race determines your qualifying order. We have a separate qualifying for the race because of this incident, we wouldn't have had a Lando Norris win today because there's a separate qualifying. But the first lap, Hamilton, once again, Hamilton is just not having a great season. And, to start off the sprint race causes a 3-car issue. But it all ended up working out anyways for, little old Lando. But, yeah, not too much more to talk about here on the first lap of the sprint race. If we can move on to more important things in life.
Yes.
If we could, yeah.
I'm sorry. I didn't realize you were transitioning to me. Yeah, I mean, the sprint race is kind of what we expected. Obviously, Verstappen grabbing the win in the ended up going on to win the race in the sprint race. And some drama, obviously, for Lando. He, fortunately enough, was able to kind of capitalize in the main race, which is probably I know the sprint race is still very important for points, but it's definitely good to have that, but good to be able to win the main race. I mean, that's the big race to win. So definitely a tale of two weekends for the McLaren, McLaren, all too known and well, if you will.
Saturday was much different than Sunday. And with Verstappen winning, picking up 8 points, Verstappen actually still exits the weekend with more points than Lando because Lando got crashed out of the first lap of the sprint race. But let's fast forward to this. The Magnussen Hamilton, let's talk about it more.
That Hamilton picture.
That's the actual picture up there up top. So this is like the exit of the corner, and Magnussen just looks like he's driving completely straight. So Hamilton's going to make the corner. Magnussen just drives the guy off the road. This was Magnussen all day, and this is why he's going to be close to a race ban because he ends up picking up 5 different penalties. I mean, it doesn't even look like Magnussen's trying to make the corner. And in the interview, both drivers were like, yeah, it was a great battle. Even Hamilton was laughing about it because in the sprint race, it doesn't matter. All those penalties Magnussen got had no effect on the regular race. Let's move on here to Daniel Ricciardo. We're talking not so great about him last week, yet he had a fantastic sprint race, qualified 4th, finished 4th, defended Carlos Sainz for all 19 laps, basically. And I don't want to spend too much time on this topic. Like I said, we're already 10 minutes into this. We haven't gotten to the race yet. But there was a lot that happened in the sprint race, including Ricciardo. I think this is big for his confidence. For someone like him who has really had a bad year, has been out-driven by Yuki the entire time. For Ricciardo to qualify in 4th and finish in 4th really says a lot. Now, that didn't transition into the race because of a bad qualifying, but it is kind of weird that you qualify 4th in the sprint, and then later on in that day, you don't even get past Q1. for the actual race in terms of qualifying. It was really concerning where that speed went. But for Ricciardo, at least he picked up 5 sprint points, which is more than what he's got in the entirety of this year with this P4. And he was doing good with Ferraris. He even said this is more of his home. But I don't know where all that went in the race. Ends up finishing 15th in the race for 0 points. And I just don't know about that. But at least for the sprint, 4th place is good. So next, please, let's go to Mercedes in the sprint. Yeah, this was Mercedes. Everything is going wrong for them in the sprint. At least they had a better race. But yeah, George Russell is just stuck behind Guan Yu Zhou the entire time. Stuck behind that green car that ended up finishing 14th in the regular race. And then Hamilton, of course, had his fiasco with Magnussen. But I believe that is going to be it for the coverage of the spring sprint race, I think. Maybe. Maybe. Do we have? No, we have this. Okay. I made this slideshow a little while ago. This is something I want to bring up. And it's something that I mentioned to our producer off camera. Look at Russell Hamilton. 5-1 this year. Is Hamilton washed up? Is he the right guy for Ferrari? I mean, it's basic. This has been Russell's team. He's 5-1. You look at these, Verstappen 6-0, Albon 6-0, Bottas 6-0. Not in the races, though. Actually, Joe's been finishing ahead of Bottas in the races. Norris 5-1. That's a lot closer. Really, all these are the only one that's close is Ferrari, and it's like, well, hold on. Ferrari, the one that are replacing the guy. Sainz is the only one that's close to his teammate, and that's the guy that they're replacing. But I kind of want to know your thoughts on this because, what do you think of the Russell 5-1, the Leclerc 3-2, I guess even the Norris 5-1?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of what you expect, right? I mean, you look at some of these, Albon and Sargent, like Verstappen, Perez. It's a lot of kind of what you expect. The numbers don't lie, you know what I mean? And that's kind of what it's shown here in a better, maybe a more, I wouldn't even say analytical breakdown, but just, in a more quantitative breakdown. So, it's kind of what you would expect for what the 2024 season has been, right? It's, it seems like, the heavy top dogs have dominated over some of the lower tier guys, and it shows here. Between the teams. So, yeah, it's kind of what you would expect in terms of the numbers. So,
yeah, it is. It's just like Russell is 86.
I would say Gasly's probably the one big one that I'm kind of a little surprised on. Pierre Gasly's always been somebody who's.
I'm not surprised. It's tough between there. That's one where it might be 5-1, but when you actually look at like the distance that Gasly's losing behind, it might be very minimal compared to someone like a 5-1 where it's Norris Piastri. It's a lot closer. But yeah, the Hamilton one's a bit concerning that he's got 1 out of 6, and Sainz is the closest one to his teammate. So that's something we can keep adding to the different shows and stuff. Is an updated graphic of this. Now it's time for the real race. The sprint race was still good, though. I hope you guys like that. That's enough talk about the sprint race. We talked about the sprint race for 13 minutes.
It's probably the most we've ever talked about the sprint race. This might have been our first sprint race we've covered.
I think we briefly went over the Chinese one.
I think we did a little bit. Yeah.
There wasn't much. Actually, I don't even know if we did.
We'll go to the first one. Nope.
All right, he's back. Lando Norris, he wins. It was really cool to watch all the post-race stuff. Literally every single driver went up to him and congratulated him. He crowd surfed here. Yeah, it was really cool. I followed Lando from his YouTube channel back when he was in F2, and I watched his streams and stuff. So it's really cool to see him, 4 or 5 years later, eventually winning a race. And not having another Russia incident where he crashed a wall. Really thought it was going to happen. I kept mentioning it to Dylan here. I'm like, someone's going to crash. And Albon almost did. And even Piastri, his own teammate, almost did.
And the great thing is he didn't win. He didn't win on like a technicality. He won pretty handily. this is a very good race
He
for
got
Lando.
put into the position due to the safety car, but I think the biggest thing here is that from the moment of the safety car, he kept gaining 2 or 3 tenths every lap, and then
He was
ended
a
up winning by
better car.
7 seconds.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to say that, and this could be controversial, could not be. During the first 30 laps of the race, Lando was not driving past anybody, and Piastri or Verstappen, whoever was winning, was doing good in clean air. And then, so, Lando wasn't making up any time. Lando was not the fastest driver on the track when he wasn't in first. But when Lando got into clear air, when he controlled the pace, he was the fastest. So if this safety car did not happen, and Lando would say, or even if it did, it was mostly the pit stop timing. Piastri could have won this race because he was leading Verstappen after the pit stops. But unfortunately, due to the safety car, he didn't. So who's to say that Lando would have had the speed to pass Verstappen? Because that wasn't shown in the first half of the race. A lot of it was due to the clean air, and that was just good pit strategy, good luck. You have to have good luck to win these races, and Lando had that, but then he capitalized, which was the biggest thing. He didn't fail to capitalize. So, yeah, that's that. This is your race results. Anything big here? Checo getting 5th wasn't great. Yuki getting 7th. Fernando somehow got 9th. Esteban got 10th. Nico Hulkenberg just barely missed out on points. Ricardo got 15th after starting last. Sargent DNF'd, unfortunately. It was the 19th and 20th for Williams. Not a great day. That's not how you're going to get new to your team. Guan Yu Zhou had a good day, 14th. Piastri, unfortunately, 13th. We'll talk about that later. Otherwise, any surprises for you in the top 10?
Yeah, Yuki in 7th, a pretty solid showing. I mean, if you're, I guess RB or whatever you want to call them, Red Bull Junior, I guess if you will. Visa Cash App. I mean, solid weekend. I mean, you got Ricardo who finished in the top 10 for top 5 even in the sprint. Then you got Yuki finishing in the top 10 and pointing in the main race. I mean, that's a solid weekend. You got to come out of Miami pretty happy to see both your drivers finding some sort of success. I mean, obviously, I would assume that that our boy Daniel Ricciardo would have loved to have been in the top 10 for the main race as well. But I mean, it's still a pretty solid show. And outside of that, your top 10 is relatively standard. Esteban Ocon or however you want to call it.
Whatever you want to call the Frenchman.
Yeah, however you want to say his name. Pretty solid performance from him. So good job there. I mean, outside of that, the the top 10 is pretty much standard of what we usually see. You got your Mercedes, you got your Red Bulls, your Ferraris, and then you just got Lando at the top, obviously, which isn't unheard of. I mean, Lando's a great driver, but I mean, obviously, this is his first race win, and it was a very exciting one at that. I'm happy that Miami got to witness a different race winner. I think Max Verstappen would have been the great TV pick, probably, just given the fact that most people know who Max is, and or even like Lewis if he would have won. He's just kind of that TV draw pick, but. Lando's an awesome pick. I think that's really cool, and obviously there's a lot of stuff with Jimmy Butler and others, so it was cool. I like it.
It was certainly a fan favorite.
Exactly. Yeah,
and a driver favorite.
Exactly. So I thought it was pretty cool.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. Let's talk about turn 1. Now I know Mr. Dillon here didn't get to see the race. I tried to explain it to him.
I saw the news. I saw the ESPN.
So in this picture here, you see Perez on the inside with locking his brakes, and then you see Verstappen taking a turn. Somehow, Checo did not take out his teammate. I mean, you look at this and you're like, how is that possible? But he just by this much. I don't understand it. If you're Checo, you're running into this corner. You're starting in 5th, and he goes forward. He very much did what Hamilton did in the sprint race, and. He almost took out his teammate. He would have took out a Ferrari with him, and Lando definitely would have won at that point. But yeah, the Red Bull almost lost. In the first corner, we almost lost both Red Bulls and Sainz and Leclerc, and then we could have had a real interesting race because who knows, Sargent could have got on the podium.
Look at that 6-pack too, by the way. Red Bull, Ferrari, McLaren in that just 6 grouping, that little pair of 6.
And it's just like you see both Red Bull drivers like Checo almost taking out his teammate.
Who are the 2 in the? Is that Alpine in the back? Maybe in that back.
I believe
picture. Because you got it looks like you got.
No,
2...
I think that was Lewis and George.
In the back.
Oh yeah,
okay.
I see it. Then Alpine and Nico Hulkenberg.
You got a lot of teammates together in that picture. So a lot of drama.
It was a Mercedes 4th row and a McLaren 3rd row.
Exactly.
But yeah, somehow Checo did not take out his teammate. This was Magnussen taking out Logan Sargent, the hometown favorite. Magnussen, as if he did not have enough issues and penalties in the sprint race, decided to take out the Fort Lauderdale man, the guy who is an hour away from the track.
And what very well could be his final race.
Yeah, he might be staying in Fort Lauderdale. We'll see.
That sounds so terrible.
Yeah, but Magnussen, I mean, he's just taking everybody's name, literally. Just a million penalties in the sprint race. And then here, crashes into Sargent, looks at him as his car's basically dead in the wall, and then drives off. And then we had a funny thing where the safety car was behind Lando, and we didn't know what was going to happen. We could have had an Abu Dhabi incident again. There was a chance that Lando could have lapped around and would have joined the back of the pack, but would have been a lap ahead of everybody. And Brundle was talking about that. But eventually, they just ended up, releasing the safety car. So everybody could go by. And this is Disastri. Yeah. I really feel bad because Piastri was winning this race, and he goes to take a pit stop, and then the very next lap, the safety car thing happens. So Lando was effectively Piastri. That should have been Piastri in first place, but it wasn't. And it really is a shame because to me, he held on to Verstappen the entire time in the first stage or first section of the race, and then really got unlucky. And then not only after being unlucky, he lost his wing to Sainz. And then he was just nowhere for the rest of the race. He was 15th. So you came up with the name Disastri. How do you feel about it?
I feel bad for Piastri. I'll say that. It's a shame that things ended up happening the way it did. I don't know. I'm conflicted with Oscar's performance today. It's a shame that it turned out the way it did. Like if he would have pitted that one lap that Lando did, then they maybe had a battle, or even Piastri could have been out up front, or he would have been out up front. But I mean, you just obviously can't ever predict when there's going to be a safety car that comes out. And unfortunately, Piastri just, after that, it was just a snowball effect pretty much for him. And I mean, he's got to be pretty happy for his teammate, but he obviously probably has to know that could have potentially have been him.
I think it would have been because, like I said,
it just depends on if he had the pace, though. That's the only thing.
He was 3 seconds behind Verstappen after 27 laps of the race. And then if he would have pit after the safety car, it would have been Piastri in first, Lando in second, and you could have effectively given the speed. It would have been Lando Piastri or Piastri Lando. So you would have at least got second, and you would have had a double McLaren podium. So it really is a shame. I like the guy for sure. It just wasn't his day. I mean, it was his day until it wasn't. I think that's the best way to put it.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Yes. And then let's talk about why this happened. Now, McLaren brought 10 upgrades to the track. Are they a new challenger? And Ferrari are bringing upgrades to Imola in a couple of weeks. Could we have a 3-horse battle? Now, McLaren, certainly in the second half of this, or I mean, I shouldn't even say that, the whole race. Because like I said, Piastri was only 3 seconds behind Verstappen halfway through the race. And then Lando, in the last 15 laps, gained 7 seconds of an advantage. So are McLaren a new challenger? Last year, during the middle of the season in Silverstone back in July, we really saw McLaren take off. They were leading the race in Silverstone. Piastri and Verstappen were battling, and then it ended up being Mercedes or McLaren podium. Could McLaren, have brought the big mid-season upgrades again? And will we see Lando Norris and Piastri consistently on the podium like we did at the end of last year? It was almost every race we had one of them on the top 5 at least. So could that happen again? Lando now has a win under his belt. Piastri obviously has a ton of confidence and speed in just his third year. So are McLaren capable of grabbing 25 points in a race with, third and fourth every race or whatever it ends up being? F1's in a real good spot right now if you take away Verstappen. They got like 3 teams battling. They have a good midfield battle. And McLaren are potentially some serious candidates to not only get podiums, but now as we're seeing win races. I think it is track specific. I don't think we're going to have a race in Austria or Monaco, for example, where Verstappen is just going to be slower than the McLarens. I think it's going to be track specific, if I can say that. And there'll be races where McLaren are the best team, or the second best team, like we saw last year, and there'll be races where they are just 8th and 9th, and that's very much how even Mercedes have been, where they'll just not. I mean, like just last week, Hamilton didn't even make it out of Q2, I think. But in this race, he gets 6th, and Russell gets 8th, which isn't the best for Mercedes. But a lot of these cars are track specific. Verstappen's the only thing that's not track specific. He just gets first every race unless he doesn't, which was today's case. But do you think McLaren are new contenders?
I think kind of what you said, you kind of hit it on the head. I don't think McLaren is going to be a team that's going to be like, this is like where they're starting to like run off and starting to win every single race. I think it's going to be a case by case basis, right? Like they're a team that definitely have the resources. They have the team to win races. They have the drivers to win races at that as well.
Yes.
It's just, I think that do I think they'll go on a bit of a run and start winning a bunch of races and become a real like threat for a championship? Probably not. I think this is going to be, as you mentioned, race by race. Maybe they'll be really good at one track, maybe not good at another. Maybe they'll be strong here, not strong there. And, it's good. At least we know McLaren has the capabilities to win races now. We can. I mean, we always knew they had the capability to win races. Yeah. We just haven't seen it.
They have random spurts, like last year in Silverstone, 2 years ago. They got first and second in Italy, and they're 5th and 6th in the standings right now. So they look good for third for constructors, unless they can challenge Ferrari. We'll see. My cat keeps meowing. If you can hear that, she's happy. Lando
celebrities.
Yes, celebrities. We got Patrick and Brittany Mahomes there on the left. You've got Tom Brady, Kendall Jenner, and Ed Sheeran. You got Trump on the right. And I saw a graphic today. Race wins for Lando without Trump, 0. Race wins with Trump endorsement, 100%. So expect to see Trump in Italy next week. Probably not. I highly doubt it if he's even allowed to leave the country. Maybe he'll be in Monaco. That's a big time race. Then you got.
I was gonna say I have a. Oh, continue.
So you got Jimmy Butler there. I was wearing the jersey earlier for obvious reasons. Him and Lando have had a little thing going on for a few years. Lando drove him around in a McLaren 3 or 4 years ago on a street car, and now they're like best friends. And I bet you Butler's real happy that Lando won the race. And then you've got some other celebrities down there, Brady again. You got Camila Cabello there and on the bottom left. And some celebrity that did the checkered flag that I'm not aware of that I probably should be aware of.
Yeah, it also looks like you got Mark Anthony down there towards the left
Yeah.
with Brady and I believe it's that Michael Jordan. Maybe is that?
It is Michael Jordan,
Okay.
and I think it was Tom Cruise, right?
Michael Jordan's like, I'm not going to
Yeah,
NASCAR this week. I'm too
Hamilton.
good for Kansas this
Yeah,
week.
got rained out anyways.
Yeah, in terms of the celebs, I actually Yahoo Sports kind of posted a list. You mentioned
Okay.
Pat Mahomes. Makes sense. He owns now Alpine. So him and Travis Kelsey are both owners of Alpine. So we gotta
Kelsey
go
was there
support.
too.
Yeah, Kelsey was there. OBJ was there after just signing with the Dolphins. Kind of ironic that he got. I really wonder if this was a whole like, hey, come on down to Miami. We got a big race coming up. We'll take you on a tour of the area and stuff. He probably got really loving this area really quick. Kiki Palmer, Kevin Durant was there, as you mentioned, Jimmy Butler. Tom Cruise made a pit stop with Mercedes.
Yeah.
Jake Paul. One thing I thought was interesting. I have the photo here. Jake Paul is drinking Celsius.
Oh boy.
He's not drinking his own brother's brand. And then,
Wow.
as you mentioned, Ed Sheeran, and then some girl named Lisa. I don't really know, but
she did. I mean, people are gonna know who she is. I'm just not aware, and I apologize.
Was she the one who did the flag?
She did the checkered flag, and apparently she was hanging out with Verstappen. So,
yeah, I don't know who she is. So
I don't know either. I want to talk about the quiet day for Ferrari because they quietly got a third and a fourth, and that's 22 points. And everybody's talking about McLaren and all this stuff. At the end of the day, Norris brings home 25 and Ferrari bring home 22. So in that battle, Lando only gained 3 points. Ferrari quietly, as I mentioned, third and fourth place. Sainz was battling with Piastri, and then obviously Piastri lost his wing. But I say it was quiet because they didn't get much TV coverage. They were basically just in a DRS train. They didn't gain any spots. They didn't lose any spots. They were effectively just in that zone of third, fourth, fifth, whatever it was, and it ends up being third and fourth. Leclerc gets one over Sainz this time. But yeah, that's about it for that. Lando Norris, like I said, let's dedicate a segment here to Lando and what he can potentially achieve. To me, like I said, as I mentioned, I kind of watch him grow up in the sport. I followed him on his YouTube when he was 18, when he was just touring the McLaren factory and streaming, and now he's a race winner. Can he consistently do it? We'll see. He didn't choke this race like he did in Russia, so I think maybe that it can be put behind him. We still haven't seen Lando battle Verstappen. And this was something that Lando even mentioned. He said, I can't battle Verstappen when he's always way ahead. And then he said, that time will come when we battle side by side. That time didn't come today because he drove away, which is huge. So we still don't know what that wheel-to-wheel driving between him, protecting a lead and stuff is like. But he definitely showed pure pace today when he had the clean speed and clean air. So what can Lando achieve? This is going to be someone who's not just going to only win one race. If he's at the right team, of course, someone like Valtteri won many races with Mercedes, and now he can't even get points. As long as Lando's in a car that he can get podiums in, he'll get podiums in, and we'll have to wait and see if he's going to be able to, when the cars are closer, can he go from third to first and battle with those guys? That didn't happen here today. They didn't need to. But to me, he's definitely a driver that's ready. We know he's got the skill, and he could potentially be dangerous here. I think he's going to be someone that wins maybe 10 races in his career. And I believe this is his fifth year, and he finally gets his first. So that's it for little old Lando.
Hold on.
And we lost our producer down there.
I did. I don't know what's going on.
He disappeared. He is Logan Sargent. He was racing until he wasn't.
Here, I'll have to.
We can move on at least while we have technical difficulties with our producer.
Okay, we're back.
We can move on to the next slide. Okay, Checo. This is Dylan's favorite driver. Check Perez.
Perez. Yep.
And once again, just not good enough. he almost killed his teammate in the first turn, and then just didn't have the pace and finished 5th place. He would have finished 6th if Piastri didn't have his problem. And maybe Red Bull didn't have the fastest car today. I think we saw that with Verstappen. But still, he's been out-qualified 6 times to 0 now against his teammate. And it was just another race where, like I said, he could have taken out Verstappen. And then you really start to question Perez, because then all of a sudden you get 0 points from the whole weekend. But that didn't happen. Still just not enough speed. It was mentioned in the broadcast plenty of times that Checo was expected to probably get a podium here. And it's just a little bit embarrassing. And I think his future at Red Bull is probably done. But they're in a weird spot, because who else can you bring in? I don't know. 8 out of 10. Here's why. We had passing, yes. We had a DRS train, yes, not that exciting. But it's an 8 out of 10 because Lando won. And it's also an 8 out of 10 because Piastri was ahead of Verstappen. And it's an 8 out of 10 because Magnussen just went through the whole field again. And it's an 8 out of 10 because it's not a forgettable race. I think that's the most important part. As a general fan, Dylan, what's the rememberability of this race?
Very rememberable. I mean, given the fact that it was Lando, I mean, somebody who hasn't won a race, this is his first race win. People will remember this as the day that Lando won his first race, right? You know, that's going to be kind of the thing. Not having Max win was nice. It was a good change, especially for a race that we've seen Max win the last 2 seasons here at this track. So I'm happy that we got to see Lando win. It definitely is going to be a rememberable one because it is going to be a new winner. It's, somebody who hasn't won in F1. So definitely people will remember this race just given the fact of that. And it's always a spectacle, man. You know, every time you get these races in the U.S., you got to remember F1 has been very much commercialized in the U.S. in the way it's presented and with the way these races are. The only race that you can't really, I mean, you still can say it, but you can't because it's a little bit different, is the race in Austin because it's been around for a while and it's become a staple of the schedule. People are just used to that race being on the schedule. But this Miami race, this Vegas race, they're in big markets. They're kind of your quintessential, you know, event races. You know, you're seeing the celebrities, you're seeing the people come out to the race. So overall, I mean, going away from, you know, the off track stuff and what we saw on track, I thought it was a good race. I thought it was entertaining, and it definitely was a nice change for F1 fans to see Lando grab the win, and definitely a well-deserved win at that. So
yeah, I think the only thing that would have made this race a 10 out of 10 is if Piastri was involved, then we had like a 3-way battle, and then maybe if the Ferraris are more involved.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it was kind of just like I said, it was a quiet day for Ferrari. It was very obvious that Perez didn't have much speed, and everything kind of just followed in line. So, yeah, good day for Lando. If Verstappen won this race, we're looking at it maybe a 6 out of 10. It's mostly just because after the safety car, we didn't know what to believe was going to happen. It's like, Lando, he'll probably not. Verstappen will probably catch up.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of what made this race good. And I think I'm also factoring in the sprint race to this because the sprint race was one of the better ones as well. So that's the end of our show here. It was a good one for Miami. All the Miami fans, all the Jimmy Butler fans, and all the Purple Sector podcast fans enjoyed this one today. I'll throw this back to Dylan to sign us off.
Chris, thanks so much again for doing the show. We are on show number 3, so obviously exciting getting through this F1 season as we navigate here throughout the rest of the year. But as for myself, as for the host of the Purple Sector podcast, Chris Everidge, we will be seeing you in 2 weeks, correct? For the next race at Imola? Are they back in races?
In 2 weeks, yes. 2 weeks.
So 2 weeks we'll be back in action.
Then we have a back.
Let's talk about. Hold on, we forgot about the big news. We got to talk about the Adrian Newey stuff. because that was one thing we didn't touch base on in the show. Adrian Newey obviously leaving Red Bull. That was one of the big storylines coming out of the week. Overall thoughts on that? We had Adrian Newey come on the show for a nice interview back in November at HSR in Daytona. He got to drive a Ford GT with Jim Farley, who's the CEO of Ford. But what do you think about Adrian Newey leaving Red Bull? I will say, when I talked to Adrian Newey, the one thing he had mentioned to me that I thought was kind of interesting is he doesn't see himself doing this too much longer.
Yeah,
I don't think he's stepping away from the series, but I don't know what his future is. He's going to have to find a spot where it's going to have to be a win now situation.
Yeah, and that's why I don't fully buy into all the Williams talk. I think Aston Martin could be interesting because they've invested so much into their facilities. And then you have Alonso. We have Stroll, whatever. But that could be real interesting. I know there's a lot of Ferrari talk. But this whole thing has just been going on for a couple of years now. You got the Horner camp, you got the Newey camp, you got the Verstappen camp. Now that Newey's leaving, what does that bring for Verstappen? Who knows? It's just all really interesting. I think now that the news is official, we can stop the rumors, and it's just up to now wherever he decides to go. And wherever he decides to go, it'll take 5 years or so to get the plans. It's not just you're not going to sign Newey and start winning races the next year. It's different compound. It's years and years and years of design and working and manufacturing. That's how Red Bull won 4 championships in a row with Vettel, and then then they hit a rough patch and they were the 3rd fastest team, and it was the new regulations back in 2020, and Newey just was the smartest one out of everybody. And I guess you're hoping that whoever signs Newey for 2026, you're hoping that he's also the smartest once again. And that could be the case. It could not be. You can't forget about all the relationships and I guess what's the word I'm looking for here? What am I looking for here? He knows everything about Red Bull. There's a word I'm looking for. The comfort of Red Bull. And the fact that he knows everything about that. He doesn't know as much about what a Ferrari. He doesn't know how the Ferrari works. I mean, he might know on a surface level, but he doesn't know what this bolt does or what this little part of aero does for that car. So anyway, he knows literally everything about Red Bull. So I think it's going to be interesting. It's not just going to be, you sign him and you're good.
It'll be a new challenge. It'll definitely be a new challenge.
And it might not work. Who knows? It has worked. Once again, that was for Red Bull. So
it'll be very weird if he ends up coming back to HSR for this upcoming year at Daytona with him out. I'm assuming he might not be wearing a Red Bull
no, but you might be able to talk to
uniform. I might be able to. If you guys are on the site, if you are listening to this YouTube video, definitely go take a look at that interview. It was a really good interview with Adrian Newey. Chris, actually, you got to add in a question for Mr. Newey on the interview that I got to ask. Yeah, exactly. He was really, really very, very nice to talk to and very willing to chat for a few minutes. We were talking a little bit about the race and that event. And if you ever are in Daytona, definitely go check out HSR. It's a really cool event. But anyways, outside of that, we will wrap things up here again. What a great race this was. The first of 3 U.S. races. We got COTA later in October, and then November rolls around, and we got Vegas right towards the tail end of the season. So the U.S. will not be seeing any races upcoming here in the near future, although Canada will be coming up. So it'll be back over here towards the, stateside area, if you will, coming up in Canada. So you'll have some races coming up in North America here just in a little bit. But as for myself, Dylan Spalding, and for the host himself, Chris Everidge, we see so long to tonight's show. See you guys in 2 weeks when we'll be covering Imola. See you guys. Peace out.